Justin Trudeau's mother, Margaret Trudeau, had an affair with JFK's youngest brother, Senator Ted Kennedy, in 1977. Pierre Trudeau, Margaret Trudeau's husband, was the Prime Minister of Canada at the time of the affair. Just a few weeks later, Margaret Trudeau had an extremely controversial affair with the Rolling Stones. As a matter of fact, this affair implicated her in a heroin trafficking situation with Keith Richards, a complete public relations nightmare for the Canadian government, which actually worked to Keith Richards' advantage. Here's the backstory. For those of you who are new to my channel, I cover different aspects of rock music history. Thanks for tuning in. In 1977, Mick Jagger and Margaret Trudeau made international headlines when it was reported they had allegedly had an affair in Toronto, Canada, a rumor Mick Jagger alluded to as recently as July of 2024. For his part, Stones guitarist Ronnie Wood stated that he had the affair with Margaret Trudeau at the hotel in Toronto. Meanwhile, at the same time, Keith Richards was arrested for heroin at that hotel. Margaret Trudeau was implicated in the Keith Richards heroin situation, which resulted in one of the most publicized court cases in Canadian history. I did a long-form video on that legal battle between Keith Richards and the Canadian government. If you want to see it, the link is available in the description box below. As mentioned, a few weeks prior to the Rolling Stones affair, Margaret Trudeau had her affair with Ted Kennedy. This is relevant to the Stone situation because during Keith Richards' legal battle against the Canadian government, it worked to his advantage that Margaret Trudeau had a well-known party girl reputation, a reputation the Canadian government was trying to keep underground. The Canadian government didn't want any more bad press than they were already getting. And so in Keith Richards' own words, when it came time for his court case, Pierre Trudeau wanted to sweep the situation under the rug as quickly as possible. The wife of the Canadian Prime Minister being implicated in a heroin trafficking case with one of the biggest rock stars in the world was the last thing the Canadian government wanted, especially given Margaret Trudeau's other public affairs. As mentioned, if you want to see the full video on this legal case, it's in the description box. In 2015, Margaret Trudeau released a memoir, and in that memoir, she spoke about the Ted Kennedy affair, which took place right before the Rolling Stones affair. Margaret Trudeau wrote the following, quote, "Sex is a basic instinct, and sexual attraction can be incredibly powerful. I remember the first time I met Teddy Kennedy. We were at a state dinner in New York. I would later come to know him as a very kind, thoughtful person. But that evening, I felt such a pull toward him that we couldn't even stand within a couple of meters of one another. Pierre was not amused." End quote. The following is from NPR. Margaret Trudeau wrote in her memoir that she had a romance with Senator Ted Kennedy during a 1977 visit to the States. In Margaret's own words, she was, quote, "torn between an intense need for Pierre and a longing for Ted Kennedy." Margaret wrote she became infatuated with Kennedy after meeting him a few years earlier. She told Kennedy that he had, quote, "not destroyed my marriage, but that I used him to help me destroy a marriage that was already over." End quote. A few weeks later, Margaret Trudeau had her affair with the Rolling Stones.